right. What's up? Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. Dr. Jeff Moore here, currently serving as the CEO of ICE, lead faculty for the cervical and lumbar spine management divisions. Usually here on Thursday, on Leadership Thursday, but thrilled to have the mic on Wednesday and to be on Jerry on Ice. So it's my debut on Jerry on Ice, and I got to say it's a real honor. It's been incredible to watch what Christina and Dustin have done over the past couple of years with this show and with this whole community, what they're doing with Jaros and with Stave Off. I really believe leading the charge on managing older adults in a more functional and real way. So thrilled to have the microphone. Before I jump into the content, a couple courses coming up. Next week, we have two of our big online cohorts starting. So persistent pain, comprehensive management, and our new telehealth Build Your Digital Practice course with Rob Vining. Both of those start next week. A couple seats in both are remaining. And of course, those will be the last online cohorts of those classes for 2019. Also, make sure you're jumping into Hump Day Hustling. That should have just went out at 6:34 in my neck of the woods. So Hump Day Hustling goes out every Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. 6:30 my time, and it's got our top 5 recommendations or 6 recommendations for articles or blogs or things that came out in the profession that we think are really worth tracking. So pretty easy. Go to any page on ptonice.com, go to the bottom. It has a sign up right there. It's free. I personally fire that to you all every Wednesday morning. So make sure you're checking that stuff out. The courses, of course, are on ptonice.com as well. All right, so with where I am in my career, I am by far the most interested on getting people to change their behavior in any tactics that help in that cause. So I think a few months ago I did an episode on here called, should I get an MRI? Sort of this idea of like this compulsive behavior that people have to want to seek out imaging. And how do you challenge that? Right? How do you respectively open doors to other alternatives for people? Right? I don't even want to use the term, how do you push back against it? Because that is totally the wrong way to go about it. Instead, we want to lay out other ideas and begin some competitive exploration. That's really what you're trying to create is competitive exploration, right? Because if you can get people wondering about which idea might be the best, they've given up on only doing the one they brought to the table. Right now we have a chance to have a conversation, and now we can actually look at competing ideas and evidence and arguments and wind up at the best conclusion. But to get people there, you've got to get them thinking about it in a more dynamic way than the way they usually present to you originally. Another one of those we bump into all the time, which is why I'm on the Jerry on Ice mic, is how old do you think I am? Right? You ever hear that quote from your patients? Right? From your folks out in industrial rehab? Right? Folks who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s? When you begin to address them with a fitness forward methodology to them curing what ails them, sometimes they'll push back with that line and say, Jeff, how old do you think I am? I hear Christina say that all the time. Her clients at Stave Off are always saying that. Like, are you crazy? Like, you want me to pick that up? You want me to push that sledge? You want me to jump? Like you're out of your mind. How old do you think I am? Now, they are coming to you with a very embedded belief that due to their advanced age, they believe that high intensity or high resistance training is inappropriate for them, right? And that is very similar in my mind to some of these other deep ingrained beliefs that you need to get imaging, right? These things that are really strongly ingrained, that pain is coming from a given part of your body and not an understanding that it's actually more multivariate in a decision made by the brain. These are very challenging things to initiate conversation on. So I want to give you some angles. When that older adult comes to you and says, how old do you think I am? Like, that's not appropriate for me. I want you to think about a couple ways you can begin to gently change that conversation and make it more dynamic, right? The first point is, and I think we have to start here, is that it's okay to admit that as we age, certain things do change, and some of those in a maladaptive way, right? Like from a bone perspective, we know that we have decreased remodeling, right? We know that osteoblastic activity decreases. We know that vascularization to that bone into other tissues decreases. We know it's more challenging to get your heart rate up and to push blood and nutrients into areas that maybe are injured or symptomatic. So we know we have some of these changes that take place with advancing age. So what we say to our clients is, when you're 22, and something gets banged up, you have an injury, you can damn near just ignore it. right? Because there's so much anabolic stuff going on. The vascularization is so good that if you just kind of get off it for a while and do something else, it's going to essentially heal itself. Now, can we be more efficient? Can we guide that healing? Sure. But the reality is, due to so much anabolic activity on board, you really don't have to address it in all that specific of a manner. However, and this is what I'll say to our clients sometimes, at your age, right, high intensity is not an option. High intensity is the only option, right? Because you don't have those anabolic systemic things charging for you naturally at this point, right? The vascularization is a bit lower and it is harder to get your heart rate up. So we need to push you a bit harder to get that heart rate ramped up, to drive that blood into those areas, right? To make up for some of that lack of perfusion, right? And to stimulate this growth. Right? The osteoblasts aren't going to do it themselves. We've got to create loading that is significant enough that it demands it out of the body. In other words, act your damn age and start moving heavy things at high intensity. If you were younger, you could get away with it. Sure, you wouldn't have to worry about it then. But due to where you are in the age spectrum, it's imperative and it isn't an option. It's the only option. I like that first angle because it flips the script. It makes people challenge their direct belief or go from I think that high intensity is inappropriate because I'm older, and makes them think high intensity is mandatory because I'm older. It wouldn't be necessary for somebody who's younger. Now, again, we aren't trying to say, and you got to watch your navigational buoys, like we aren't trying to say that people who are younger shouldn't have high intensity training. We are simply making a point that in some ways, the logic and the science mandate the high intensity more so in that older adult because of some of those systemic things that are changing with age. So that's your first chance to challenge their belief a little bit that high intensity training is not only appropriate for them, but necessary for them. Okay, if you're rolling with that and you're getting them to think like, oh, I guess it wasn't intuitive to me, but because I'm at an advanced age, maybe I should be doing this. And then you can begin to have this conversation about consequences. And this is where what Dustin and Christina have done with the 1 rep max thing is genius, right? This 1 rep max living, this concept that, some of these older adults are doing their daily activities damn near at maximal exertion. Which, number one, could set up somebody for an increased risk of injury. I mean, if you've ever went to the gym and done a ton of work at 95% of your 1 rep max, walking out of there that you're more in that speed wobble than when you're down at 60 or 70%. Number two, it's exhausting. Like doing things at that close of a percentage to your 1 rep max is absolutely exhausting. So that this whole move to end 1 rep max living is such a wonderful conversation that's blooming around the country. And I think it factors in here too from a functional perspective. And so again, we compare it to, I do, compare it when I'm chatting with older folks to younger folks. And I'll say, look, back to that 22-year-old, right? When you're 22 and you have an injury, right, and you see a little decline in function, right, a brief decline in function, it might affect their sports, right? It might affect how they're doing in the CrossFit Open, but it's probably not going to have a real effect on their ADLs because they had a way bigger gap. They weren't buzzing the tower and they weren't giving almost their maximal exertion to accomplish basic activities of daily living. They had a really big buffer there. So even when they get hurt a little bit, they can still live their life at full function. They just need to change the way they're doing some of their higher level activities. But for an older individual, the consequences are higher. The consequences are much higher because any decline in function or capacity, they were already buzzing the tower on not being able to do some of their basic activities. If that declines even a little bit, that can be functionally catastrophic. So what we tell our older adults is, Lois, I can't fail you with low intensity. The stakes are too high, right? I can't fail you with low intensity. Like if we go low intensity and we lose a chance to build strength every session that I've got you with me, that fall away from where your 1 rep max used to be is going to be able to eat up and dramatically change in an unfortunate way your activities during your day, things that you love to do, things that bring you purpose. Lois, I can't fail you with low intensity. The stakes are too high. If you were younger, we wouldn't have to do this much strength training. Right? Because you can already do everything that you enjoy. You can already do your work, even when you're injured, even when you haven't restored yourself back to what your previous level of strength was, you can still get away with it. But Lois, that's not your jam. right? We need you back not only where you were, we know that where you were is probably what got you here. We need you where you were plus 25%. And low intensity won't get us there. So I can't fail you with low intensity, Lois. The consequences are too high. So again, getting them to understand, older adults, that, oh, while high intensity can be valuable and important for younger people, it's imperative for me. It's imperative for me. I don't really have an option because the stakes are so high. And hopefully it gets them thinking, Jeff is right. Like if I got 20% weaker, like even the basic things that I love to do, I'm not sure those would be in the cards for me. And boy, if I got 20% stronger, there's a few things I really wish that I could do that might all of a sudden open up. And the only way we're going to get there is if we're at a level of intensity that drives strength changes. So again, with both of these points, some of the things that happen systemically with age and where somebody sits functionally, right, relative to their strength levels, begin to flip the script for these people to realize that high intensity is their only option. Other people might be able to get away with skipping it, but not older adults, right? And finally, in group 3, I think it's worth saying that some of the other tools we have, like manual therapy techniques, aren't as potent sometimes in older adults because the mobility isn't there to leverage the neurophysiological effects and tissue chemical changes that happen with manual therapy. Like if you think back to like Julie Fritz's TBC in '07 for the neck, remember how when you got to the bottom of the flow diagram, there was kind of that decision of, are you going to focus more on exercise and conditioning or more on manual therapy? And really the decision-making factors and the patient presentations that affected that was age and chronicity, right? If you're older and it's more chronic, exercise and conditioning seems to be more potent. Part of the reason we believe that to be true is that when somebody's bones, say in the spine, don't move very much relative to one another because degenerative changes have increased stability over time, it's harder to create chemical environment changes due to the fact that the motion really isn't there to be able to do so. When you think about doing thrust manipulation and creating really fast, rapid movement and neurophysiological effects, there's an argument that says that could be more challenging when motion isn't present to be able to do it. So in those people, again, we need to use the old ticket, right? We need to ramp up their heart rate, ramp up their system. If we can't do it locally, we got to do it globally. So it's yet one more argument that spending time doing other things like hands-on manual therapy might not be as effective. So strength and conditioning and training is really where the time should be spent. It's kind of the final argument once they understand what they're up against systemically, what they're up against functionally. Now you understand why you're allocating what you are as far as your options and carving out time spent during their session. And all of it favors high intensity functional training in your older adults. In your younger adults, you got a lot of other options, right? They can get away with all sorts of stuff. In the older adults, we cannot fail them with low intensity. The consequences are too high, and what we're working against demands that of us. Good, give that some thought. I think with older adults, sometimes they come in and they're just hell-bent that these things are inappropriate for them. And our arguments need to be ready as they're willing to see them, that not only is that not the case, right? It might be inappropriate or unnecessary for other populations. It is mandatory for them. And if you could just drop these in, right? Every couple sessions, bring these points up when they say, well, why do I have to push so hard? Right? And boom, there you are, right? Look at what we're up against with your system. Here's how we're going to make those changes. Look where you were functionally. Here's how we're going to get over the bar. Here's why we think it's the best way to spend our time. You are ready to rock and roll as soon as those patients crack those doors open. Don't shove them back, right? Just challenge some of those concepts, bring up competing ideals, ask them questions about whether or not they see these different vantage points, and move forward step by step. All right, team. Hey, thank you again, Dustin and Christina. I love being on Jerry on Ice. That was a real honor. All those courses, ptonice.com. Hump Day Hustling should be in your inbox. I hope you enjoy it. Had some good resources in there this week. Other than that, I will be off with Jordan Berry in Madison, Wisconsin. Course is sold out. We're heading over there tomorrow, and then we'll be working with that crew all weekend. And then the only, I think, cervical non-sold out one we have for the rest of the year is in Milwaukee. I think we have a few seats there still. Alan Fredendahl, Kelly Benfey, Rachel Selena, all going to be there. I saw Perez signed up last night. So that'll be in Milwaukee, I think the first or second weekend of November. So that one's still on ptonice.com. Team, get out of here. Go enjoy your Wednesday. Hope everyone's doing awesome. Take care, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.